Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new edition of Wilds on Film. I am your host, Stephen Wilds. Today, joining me to discuss the Alien series, Eric Lockaby. How are you doing today, Eric?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, I'm glad you came.
For those who are interested in, thanks. For those who are interested in my life, there's not much of interest. I teach and I write. And the teaching and the books are apparently patently terrible. But if you'd like to know about any of them, you can look up Kick Around Nixon, and you can buy as many copies as your bank account can handle.
That sounds awesome.
Anyway, thanks for having me today, man.
No problem. I've known Eric for quite a while, and one of the film series that I've really enjoyed discussing with you for many years has been the Alien franchise. And I know you and I both have some kind of different experiences with the franchise from what we talked about before. And from what I remember, you've been an Alien fan for quite a while.
I have been, actually. It's a quick story. I first watched Alien and Aliens in the same year. I guess that was probably 83 or 84. Anyway, I had to be later than that. Anyway, because I wasn't old enough to watch them. So 86. Point is that I fell in love with them, and I found out not long after that the movie my parents went to go see when I was in utero was Alien, and my mother had to leave halfway through it because I started kicking during this movie, during the scene, the chest bursting scene. Anyway, so ever since I've always had kind of like a great fascination with Alien.
Now that's really interesting. So Alien came out in 1979, and it was from director Ridley Scott. And the main credited writer on the film was Dan O'Bannon, who actually, I didn't realize that he's had a part in pretty much every Alien film since then.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff about that too. I'm not completely familiar with all of his parts, though. Although I assume it's a writing credit or some kind of producing role. So what kind of role has he had?
Okay, Dan O'Bannon for Alien and Alien 3 was listed as a head writer. For Aliens in 1986, he was listed as the character writer. Okay. He was also came back and was one of the writers on Alien Resurrection, and he was one of the writers on the first AVP movie.
Oh wow! I did not realize that he was that ingrained. Yeah. I think it's funny that with Aliens that he was the character writer instead of a head writer. And it's funny because James Cameron obviously is a control freak.
Right, and James Cameron was the head writer on that one. He was the head writer on Aliens.
Right. He would never let another person be head writer. With good reason, too. He works pretty well on his own. Go ahead.
Yeah. So O'Bannon, did all this stuff, and it's kind of interesting. He also worked on Total Recall and a couple other, what I would call major 80s action films and stuff that we kind of remember from, for people our age, from our childhood. But going back to Alien real quick, so that's a very interesting story about you being seeing the film in utero, and there's a comedy level to the fact that you started kicking during the chestburster scene, which I thought was interesting. The chestburster scene, we'll start with that since that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to mention was. There's a lot of ideas behind the chestburster scene and a lot of kind of notions about this idea of like disease and stuff and childbirth and everything forming on the inside and then something coming out. Also, I remember reading that one of the reasons Ridley Scott liked it so much was the idea of a male giving birth and like the pain and structure behind that. So my question to you, and just what I kind of would like to talk to you about, is what about that scene does it for you? Why do you like that scene so much?
Well, for me personally, I think that I do agree that I think it's interesting taking a group of males and females, putting them together under a kind of blue collar, not even blue collar, just working class oil rig, basically, traveling through space, to put them all together and then to further homogenize them by having the males giving birth instead of the women, right? I think that's really cool, and it's probably part of the reason why Alien is seen as a very fondly as a feminist critique, and one of the few science fiction feminist critiques. But for me personally, the chest bursting scene was always just I don't know, it's just a special effect.
Sure.
It was cool. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, now it was a very cool special effect, and of course, most people know or have heard the story that the idea was they didn't tell the majority of the actors what was going to happen. They wanted the genuine response. Correct? Isn't that the way I've heard that story?
Yeah, that's the story, and it's like other Hollywood stories. They always seem like they're kind of just made up and a little bit of maybe bullshit, right? And so, I've put yourself into the scene and think that you are, master thespian working on this set, right? Mm-hmm. And then somehow John Hurt has a alien going to burst out of his chest, and you don't see the man under the table who's going to make it happen, right?
Right.
So, I've always kind of seen. I think probably what it was is they didn't have the actors see what the actual alien looked like. They didn't have them see the test run of the of the special effect happening,
right?
So that maybe their reactions would be more authentic. But anyway, but no, I thought about that, and for me, the scene is interesting because of the fact that part and parcel of why I find the movie so interesting, briefly, which is that most movies, especially horror films, and especially movies catered toward a major audience, mainstream audience, we know who our main characters are. And in a horror film, typically, your main character, you can tell who this person is, and you have a pretty good idea that this person's going to make it the entire movie, right? You can pick who the people are going to be killed off and who your main character is. But however, with Alien, that moment is the one where suddenly your brain is trying to figure out, okay, who's our main character here? Who is the person that's going to survive? Because I think historically you would think it would be Picket Fences. What's the guy's name? I forget his name. The actor. Picket Fences. He plays.
I totally just blanked on his name.
Anyway, but his name in the film is he's Tom Skerritt. He plays Dallas.
Skerritt. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. He plays Dallas, and so I think most people probably in that scene saw the role of the hero deferring to Tom Skerritt because he was the most prominent male in the movie, and he seemed most main character-like. And so I like the fact that moment when that special effect happens, when John Hurt is killed, that suddenly you have to figure out who your main character is, and you spend another 45, 50 minutes seeing all your potential main characters killed off while you end up with Sigourney Weaver.
Right.
It's probably not the answer you're looking for, man.
No. That's actually a very good thing. And one of the things I would like to talk about in a minute is the difference between the first three movies. How we have Alien, really, that is a horror movie. It's almost like I don't want to call it a slasher movie, but it's very similar to, a traditional horror movie. Then we have Aliens, which kind of became an action horror movie. And then I think the third one was trying to go back to that, but really didn't accomplish it. But for me, personally, one of the things that helps make Alien kind of a horror movie is I'm very much afraid of outer space. To me, outer space is very frightening because if you think about it, you're in this box of a ship. The Nostradamus was the name of it, correct? Nostromo. Okay. So you're out there in this box on the Nostromo, and if you leave any part of this box, you're going to die unless you are protected in certain ways. And
another box.
Right, yes, another box. And so not only is it dangerous outside, but now there is something inside that is making it dangerous to be inside. And of course, it's whatever this thing is inside is much better at hiding and staying a little bit stealthy and being a bigger threat than you can be. So to me, the premise and the setup of Alien was very scary. It was kind of a horrifying concept. And that's one of the reasons why I think I got into it so much. And the tone and the setting and everything adds all to this. And so did you find Alien scary the first time you saw it?
Certainly. But on what you're saying there, I think that's an excellent point because we look at the slasher film genre, and it's been said often that Alien nicely fits a lot of those tropes. And when it came out, it was said to be Jaws in space, but I disagree. I always thought about it as Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space. Which
Really?
I think, because of the frenetic filmmaking at the very end of it, where Ripley is running away, or she's running to the back and forth of places, and also because that has such a documentary feel to it. Not quite documentary, but a more what am I looking for here? In the moment type of almost found footage look to it, the way that Texas Chainsaw Massacre has. I'm getting off my point though. But you make an excellent observation, because Camp Crystal Lake and New England, so for or whatever town is in Halloween.
Right.
And of course, obviously, I just mentioned Friday the 13th, Jaws, and Halloween. There,
sure.
Those are 3 places I was referring to. All of those are the locations where these things occur. So obviously, we are in Crystal Lake, and all of the things that make up the Friday the 13th are around the Camp Crystal Lake area. However, you can leave those places. There's always the feeling that, oh, well, if these people could just get to a car, if the car would just start, if Jason didn't magically appear behind them every time they tried to run away, they could escape. However, the location in Alien is unique because of the fact that it is obviously a concrete location, but you can't escape it. It's like if the house where Jason comes to kill people in Camp Crystal Lake, if the house were just sealed off and sent into outer space, so they could not leave anyway. So it's more horrifying for that reason.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think the change in Aliens, where they were on a planet, I think that kind of changed the dynamic of it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think Aliens had its own stuff that worked for it, but to me, Alien was a much scarier movie. The aliens in Aliens did not scare me, and the setup did not scare me nearly as much as Alien did. And that whole ending sequence, kind of jumping towards the end of the movie for Alien, with Sigourney Weaver, I really was not sure the first time I saw it if she was going to live or die. I did not know. Now at the time, I was young enough where I wasn't sure. I could have just went and found out, hey, is there a second one of these movies? Does she come back? But I didn't know that at the time. So for me, there was a big threat of like, oh no, I want her to survive. She is the last living person, and she may not make it.
Right. And then we have that wonderful false denouement where she has escaped the alien and she has gotten to the escape pod, and now she can just chill out and she can go to sleep in her tiny panties.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, the alien has returned. I love the false denouement there, and I love the fact that James Cameron, who obviously was obsessed with this film, for me, Aliens was Cameron's masterpiece for me, and he tried to copy so many beats from that movie.
Yes.
You look at it, and the scene where Ripley and Alien is going back and forth trying to detonate the ship, not detonate the ship, and then get to the escape pod. All of those things, you look at Aliens, and they match up when Ripley is going to get Ellen. Sorry, not Ellen. She is Ellen. Going to get Newt.
Newt, yeah.
She's going to get Newt from the nest, and you have a lot of the same things, right? A lot of the same types of shots, and then on top of that, you also have the false denouement where you have everyone is safe, everyone's good, and then suddenly Bishop gets his ass ripped.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah, and that is a great moment. That is an awesome moment in that thing because like you said, because I've seen the first one, I knew they weren't safe. I'd been in that moment before, but I did not know that the Queen. One, I didn't expect to see the Queen, but I should have. Two, I did not know the Queen was going to make such an awesome entrance by just ripping someone in half. But yes,
right. I wanted to say something you said earlier. You mentioned you talked about men reproducing. Ridley Scott wanting to have a man be pregnant and to go through the pain of birth.
Yeah.
Well, obviously Alien was very popular and it was very different in its kind of high concept, or it is high concept. So it's the kind of thing other people could make without infringing on the actual property. You just have some kind of space-based activity and some kind of xenomorph, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, there's a movie called The Inseminator that came out
Okay.
about a year and a half, 2 years after Alien. And as you can tell from the name, it takes that idea of impregnating people and it makes it a lot more apparent. So it's a knockoff from the early 80s. Go ahead.
I may regret this, but I'm going to add that to my list of look this up later. The Inseminator.
Right,
okay.
Right.
All right.
But go ahead with your comments. I just wanted to say that for people who might be listening and hadn't heard of the Inseminator.
No, and you know what? I guarantee you a lot of the listeners have not. So, all right. One of the other things that we're kind of looking at here with as we transition from Alien to Aliens is the theme of motherhood continues, or of giving birth and motherhood and all that, because we now jump. I'm sorry. Do you remember exactly how many years it is between Alien and Aliens?
Unfortunately, yes, it's 80 years.
Okay, but there's some cryogenic freezing going on. Or some deep sleep, and we now find out that Ripley has had a daughter of her own who has lived and died, and then also a lot of time has passed, and the Wayland Corporation, gets involved, and we now have the entrance of Paul Reiser's character, who, as a child, when I saw this movie, I hated Paul Reiser. Like when he started doing the Mad About You TV show, all I could think was like, no, you're that douchebag that almost got Ripley killed.
Same thing. Every scene, every funny scene that would happen in Mad About You, I would every time he'd say some funny quip, I would just think of Ellen Ripley would say something like, "A mistake, Burke. These people are dead." Anyway, and so I agree. I never did like him because of the excellent sleazeball he played in Aliens.
Right. But so as we kind of transition into this, and we want to talk for a second about the theme of motherhood, the big introduction for this and what kind of seals the deal on that is the introduction of the character Newt, whom I actually, in doing some research for this, read a couple of interviews with the actress who played Newt, and came across that she apparently has several lines that her friends to this day will still just randomly quote to her from the movie. So I thought,
oh really?
I thought that was kind of funny.
That's funny. That was her. Sorry.
I was just going to say the famous one is that they come out at night, mostly at night, or at night mostly. And so whenever they'll say stuff to her, they'll be like, so-and-so wants to go to the movie, mostly wants to go to the movies. Stuff like that to kind of pick at her.
That was the only movie that she made. She's a school teacher now.
Yes.
And, James Cameron, I imagine, is not very kind to his actors, and it takes a certain personality type to put up with that. That's why I think Sigourney Weaver likes him so much. I think she probably likes that kind of personality. She seems to have it herself. Anyway, point is that we look at the few child actors that he's used, and their lives in film have not turned out incredibly well. Obviously, the woman who played Newt, she went on and never acted again. And Eddie Furlong, we won't mention Eddie Furlong.
That would be an interesting study. You make a good point here.
Anyway, and so, I think it's rough for child actors anyway, but I think I'm probably getting off the point now. So back to Newt.
Just saying that, so we have this introduction of Newt, and this kind of seals the deal on the theme of motherhood, which I think was a brilliant idea, because you have this tied into with the Queen alien, and it's almost like this fight between these two dominant alpha female personalities who were both trying to protect what they feel is rightfully theirs, or to some sense of ownership or protecting. And so we have this conflict throughout the movie between these two. And I think the themes, although they're kind of different in some ways from Alien, I think Cameron did a great job of continuing having these kind of deeper messages to this stuff.
I agree completely. I think not to switch from Alien specifically to Cameron, but I think Cameron has always worked really hard to, in a kind of male way, to support a feminist perspective. And I think that with Aliens, and probably the reason why he got Sigourney Weaver to come back on board, because she was not interested in doing another Alien film.
Right.
But at first, I think that he took the ideas that were there and the apparent, well, not overly apparent, but the apparent question or critique on the usual expectations of females and the expectations of males. I think he took that and extended it naturally to give us more character with Ripley, and did a wonderful job with it. It could have been really hokey, but having that foil in the Queen alien protecting her children, these faceless children, and then having Ripley protecting her a surrogate child, I think it has a wonderful effect, and that's the reason why this film is in 86, I believe, it
yes.
was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, 11 Academy Awards, a lot of Academy Awards.
I know it was at least 9, and you're correct. It was 1986.
Yeah, 86. Okay, good. And but I suppose the awards would have been in 87 then. But regardless, the movie is not just important because it created the space marine type of movie, but it also was one of the first science fiction movies to be nominated for awards in the mainstream consciousness.
Yeah. Now, just a side note of something you mentioned. I actually was reading. So after the success of Alien, they began the second film and were way into pre-production with an entire script for Ripley and all of this without even securing Sigourney Weaver for the film. And I thought that was very interesting.
That is.
And the third one... I was just going to say, the third one, they did the exact same thing, except that the third one spent so much time in pre-production that it wasn't as big of a deal. They would have had time to make arrangements had they not been able to get her. But I thought that was very interesting, and I know we're not going to spend much time talking about Alien Resurrection today. However, I will say that I read a note that they actually planned. They had Joss Whedon and a couple other people do multiple scripts that didn't involve Ripley, just in case she didn't agree to do the movie. So interesting.
I wish those others had been made. But we'll get to that later.
Right. Yeah. So what?
You want? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask. So talk to me a little bit about Aliens. Talk to me about what you liked and didn't like about Aliens.
Okay, so then one of the major things I like about Aliens, and maybe obviously I didn't like this when I was 7 years old watching it, right? But I had almost failed that year in school, and I got my report card in, and it was terrible. And I was about to be on restriction when my dad got home. But before he got home, I watched HBO, and there was this movie called Aliens. So anyway, I remember that in my mind, my father coming home was akin to the the aliens coming to kill everyone. Anyway, but,
what a great correlation right there.
Older me realizes that the tonal shift between the first two movies, while still synthesizing, they're still synthesizable into a whole sort of, into unity. But the tonal shift between them is so massive, and that's one of the things I love, that we go from what I call Texas Chainsaw Massacre in space to Vietnam in space. And so I love that first and foremost. The second thing is that while Cameron's writing and not Dan O'Brien, what was the guy's name? Dan O'Bannon. And Dan O'Bannon's obviously character writing. It's not that extreme. It's not even all that good. But I loved how of the 15 Marines, of the 15 characters or so that go onto the LV-246, I believe is the planet, that go to LV-246, that most of them had a fairly recognizable character type.
Sure.
And they were all enjoyable to watch. You had Vasquez as the ridiculous Latino American Marine, right? And then you have, of course, I can't remember his name. Game Over Man. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah, it's Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. I can't remember the character's name.
Right.
It's been a while. Anyway, that was one of the things I liked, was because I wasn't just waiting for aliens to show up and kill a bunch of characters I didn't give a shit about while waiting for the heroine to overcome it. There were a lot of fun to watch characters. Everybody was fun to watch and interesting to watch. That's one of the things that stands out to me, and even as a kid.
Right.
What about yourself?
Well, of course, obviously there was a little bit more action, and like I said, that's kind of what we talked about earlier. Is this became kind of an action horror movie? But I also like the idea of, okay, now in the first Alien movie, you had a group of unsuspecting people who did not know what they were going to find and had no clue. But one of the things about horror movies is once the bad guy is revealed, there's less horror to it, right? In a traditional slasher or supernatural horror movie, once the big reveal happens, there's just a tonal shift in the film and it kind of goes downhill. It becomes more about the running or, okay, well now how is she or he going to defeat this thing? But with Aliens, now that I think that was the smartest thing they did, it's like, well, now that the reveal has happened, what do we do? Okay, let's up it. Let's up the number of aliens, right? But also let's send in a group of people who really might actually stand a chance against, against this alternate force, right? Against these enemies.
Right.
And we're going to send in some trained Marines. We're going to send them in with a plan. Now, of course, because it's a sci-fi movie and because it wouldn't be an interesting movie if it didn't, that plan is going to go to shit immediately, right?
Right. Yeah.
However, I wanted to root for them, and there was a part of me that fell for Cameron's trick and thought they might have a chance. They might be able to do it. And I really think that the best part of that movie, one of my favorite parts, is that first encounter where they go down into the kind of sub-basement area where they encounter the aliens for the first time. And just everything goes foobar because of the weapons. And then at one point, doesn't one of them actually shoot his teammate? And,
Yeah, that's, what happens is that one of them gets pulled up by an alien above him. And when he gets pulled up, I think he ends up shooting another one. And that causes some explosion or something, if I remember correctly.
Right, and that was one of my favorite parts of that movie. And then you have just some really awesome scenes mixed in there when Vasquez and I don't believe it's Bill Paxton, whoever she's holding when they just pull the pin on the grenade in the vent and decide to end it all.
That was the general who had only had 3 drops, and 2 of them were simulated.
Right.
Anyway, that was the general. Not general. He was a commander or whatever for the mission.
Yeah. and that's one of from my childhood. That's one of the scenes I remember the most from that movie. And of course, the very iconic end scene in the power loader armor, which it's an iconic scene for multiple reasons. But there's just something that as a kid, that thing of there's a giant alien on one side of the room and there's something akin to a mech on the other side, and they're about to have a slugfest in the middle of this ship's hangar. What can go wrong with this scene? This is amazing. At least as a kid, you feel that way.
Well, and to go off the same idea about aliens, I agree completely that the arrogance of the Marines is wonderful to watch, but also it's neat to see it all fall apart, despite the fact that we should be rooting for these main characters, because suddenly all that arrogance they've had the entire time about this bug hunt, right, is going to fall apart, and they're not going to be as successful as they thought they were. Anyway, but that goes back to Cameron's style. He's very much, he likes to use every part of a film he can to, he likes to tie everything together. And so the arrogance ties into the idea of the Vietnam War, and the only person who isn't really arrogant throughout is Ripley, right? And something else I like, the power loader, the visiting going to the alien nest, the role of Bishop. All of these things seem to tie in so nicely that even James Cameron seems to make fun of himself a little bit whenever Bishop is looking at the nuclear reactor, and he has not Sean Bean, sorry, but Michael Biehn has Michael Biehn, his character looking at something, watching for an outburst of the exhaust there, and he watches it, and then Michael Biehn character says, "All right, how long till it explodes?" Right? Because even the characters seem to be aware that the world they're living in its entirety is made to either kill them, right? No, it's made to kill them, right?
Yeah,
everything that exists can be a danger, and I love the alien. I love aliens. Sorry, I kind of went off on a rant. I didn't really reach a cohesive point. I apologize.
No. You made a very good point. Everything in that movie, if you watch that movie, everything that happens towards the end of the movie or is a key point is addressed at some point in the beginning of the movie. And there are times
Right.
when you have these MacGuffins or whatever you want to call them that are inserted into movies that you're like, man, that would have been a lot cooler had they had something to kind of symbolize it or show me that, hey, this is going to be important later. And some movies don't do that. And on the flip side, some movies do it so heavy handed that you're just like groaning, like, okay, I get it. That's how they're going to kill the thing. All right, move on.
Exactly. I think of Terminator 3, where at the beginning of the movie, the Schwarzenegger's T-100 has a there's some kind of thing in him that he throws away that it makes a giant explosion behind them.
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, obviously he's going to be using that at the end of the movie.
Sure.
Whereas Cameron, he's a lot more subtle with these things. The power loader, for instance, by the end of the movie, you have forgotten about the power loader.
Yes.
It was a cool as hell when you saw it, right? But this is what Chekhov calls hiding the gun. Anton Chekhov, the Russian writer,
from the
he
duel,
calls this,
right?
hiding the gun. Right. The idea is that you can take an item that will be necessary later on, and your readers need to know that it exists, and you need to then put it away somewhere. And they do that with the power loader, and he does that with a lot of things. For instance, when Bishop is looking at he's examining the facehuggers that are there on the colony base on LV-246, and he is saying that he believes that there must be some bigger type of creature that produces all of these pods, right?
Mm-hmm.
There must be something we haven't seen yet, right? Those are his words, something
Sure.
we haven't seen yet. And they make jokes about like, the queen ant and all these things. And then obviously we forget about it until we go to see the queen, and then we get this payoff, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's honestly, it's very well done, and it's a good in between of that. If you're really paying attention, you'll catch it. But there's enough left in the movie that you have the potential to forget about it before the end. But like I said, it's also not so heavy-handed, where it's like, oh, well, how could you forget about that? But that's a very good point. And I think one of the really the major points of the film, for me also, was when we talk about continuing themes and doing different aspects between the films, was how Ripley treats Bishop. And we know the reason Ripley treats Bishop this way is because of her experience from Alien, with Ash, with the other android. And it's so weird to me because in Aliens there's no mention of the space jockey, or really even, it doesn't even go more into the myth of what the first movie kind of set up. It's 80 years in the future, as you said, and that it doesn't need to do that. That would have just complicated that film. However, like you said, I think Cameron studied Alien, and he said, these are the elements that I want to bring into the next one. And as a kid, I kept thinking, why is Ripley being such a dick to Bishop? He's a cool guy.
Right.
So what do you think about, is this a theme that's trying to kind of say something about either robots and technology or about trust, or why do you think Cameron chose to kind of continue this line of theme here?
I think it's because both films, and I think Cameron lit on this, I think he was interested by it. I think both films, they challenge the idea, not just challenge, they critique the idea of the bureaucracy, right? Sure. The idea of people being expendable, of there being people pre-programmed, right, in terms of, a corporate interest, being pre-programmed toward a certain idea of achieving it and not really caring about the human element of what that entails, right?
Sure.
We see that with Ash, certainly, right, because he not only breaks, in the first movie, he goes above Ripley's authority to let John Hurt in, whose name I'm forgetting right now.
Was he
anyway,
Kane?
He was Kane, you're right. And so goes above her authority to let Kane in, which honestly was smart. But anyway, and then he also is the only one that has contact with Mother later on. And we find out his directive, right? And this that everyone else is expendable, including himself, because he's a pre-programmed. He doesn't matter. He's a pre-programmed non-person, right?
Right.
And we see that again in the second movie, and as we know, Cameron was trying to make a comment on Vietnam.
Yeah.
Not a particularly meaningful one, but nevertheless, he was trying to. And we see again this hostility toward the structure, right? Toward the man, right? The idea that there is this bureaucratic entity that doesn't really care about human value, right? It is a cyborg. It is a cybernetic human would be too kind, I think, right?
Sure.
So I think that extends the theme, and I think Ripley's disdain for Bishop reflects the fact that not only did she obviously have to deal with a android previously who was murderous, right?
Yeah.
But
whom she didn't know was an android.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It doesn't bode well for the future of what they're trying to do when there's another pre-programmed man there. And I think it might be worth mentioning that both times they're men.
Yeah, that is a good point.
And which is why. Yeah.
Until
Whereas
Alien
the
Resurrection.
fourth film. Right. Right. Which sucks. But we'll get to that soon.
Right.
But go ahead. I hope that was a satisfactory answer.
No. That was a good answer, and I agree with you. I think that was what's kind of what Cameron was going for, and I like this idea that you keep bringing this back to. And I know he said it before: Vietnam in space or Vietnam with aliens. But it's very fitting and it works. And I like that at the end, she has a different outcome. It's not like, okay, the android was trying to kill me again, or something like that. With this one, Bishop's like, no, I was just following my programming, and
Exactly.
Right. And I think this is a good point to kind of lead into Alien 3, which was done in 1992. It was by director David Fincher. And as I said, O'Bannon returned as the head writer on this one. But, and I'm sure you know quite a lot about the problems that this film had in its production. And if for those out there who may not know, there are entire articles that you can find that I have found recently that discuss the problems with the sets, the problems with the multiple scripts, the problems with not knowing who the director was going to be originally. And David Fincher has listed this as one of his worst encounters directing. And I found a quote that I want to share before we go into your opinion on this that I thought was interesting, and where David Fincher actually said, "Until this point in my career, I thought everyone was in this business to make good movies." And to me, if that is not a quote that kind of sets the tone for Alien 3, I don't know what else would. So, Eric, if you would please share your thoughts on Alien 3.
Okay, so when I went to see Alien 3, I had already bought the novelization and read it, so I knew what I was getting into when I went into it, because, as you've said, I'm a big fan of the series.
Right.
A little too big of a fan anyway, but since I own the novelizations and have read the novelizations to all of them,
sure,
including the later books too, outside of the movies. But anyway, I went to see it, and 12-year-old me recognized that it wasn't as good as the first two, but I was fine with it. My dad didn't really like it all that much, but I was happy because I had read the book beforehand, so all the things I expected to see happened, right, or most of the things. Anyway, but looking back on it, Alien 3 is not a terrible film. I think David Fincher and also the writers pulled out of it what they could, and I think there are some pretty decent things. I think that the little bit of a romance between Ripley and the Doctor, whose name I can't remember.
Sure, who was my favorite character in that whole movie was the Doctor. Yeah. And when he died, I honestly was like, okay, well, this movie's kind of done for me. Go ahead.
But then again, that should be that's the sign of a well-made character, or at least an effective character. Because you are mad when they die, right?
Agreed.
But although, as happened in True Blood recently, I think sometimes I can agree that a character can be killed off just stupidly for no reason, as happened last week in True Blood.
I'm not up to date on that one, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's pretty dumb. It's a major character is killed off as you would, like, take your shirt off. It's just, and he's dead now.
Okay.
Who cares?
Okay.
But anyway, But I can't remember his name, but I thought the Doctor character was very
Mm-hmm.
interesting to watch, and most of that may have been on the performance of the actor, whose name I also can't remember. But I thought they had a good chemistry together, and I don't know, I found him interesting because in this prison planet of all men, and to the extent that they, they kind of have like a kind of monk-like existence there.
Oh
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Monks are the word monks are used several times in describing those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of cool that their relationship was not so immediately sexual, which made his character more sympathetic, but that it also was sexual, so that he wasn't friend-zoned by Ripley, because that's the worst, right?
Yeah, sure.
So,
in space, when you're worried about being torn apart by, some giant alien, the worst thing that can happen to you is to get friend-zoned.
That's right. In space, everyone can hear you friend-zoned. It's just embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
But, so I liked that. I also really liked most of the characters. The main, and you can tell my familiarity with Aliens. The Alien series drops off because I'm forgetting all the names of these characters.
Sure.
I hate to use this descriptor, but the lead prisoner, the black guy, I really liked watching him. I liked the kind of Malcolm X-esque mood, tone they gave his character, and I especially like the way he went out at the end.
Oh yeah,
punching an alien in the face.
No, that was great.
Is that all you got?
That was great. Yeah, I will tell you that my experience with this this particular film in the franchise was I came home from school one day. And it was a free HBO weekend. So we had gotten HBO for free one weekend, and Alien 3 was on. And although I was old enough I could have gone and seen it in the theater, I hadn't because I think I couldn't find anybody to go with me or something like that. Not the point. So I remember watching this movie and not enjoying the majority of it, except for I've only ever seen this movie twice. That's something I feel like I should point out. And the second time I realized how great the Doctor was. But the first time, as my younger self seeing this movie for the first time, I remember enjoying that part that we just discussed. I remember enjoying one or two other parts, like kind of cool kills that the alien did. Then, the alien running on the ceiling had that very David Fincher kind of creepy feel, like I just wanted to look above me and make sure there was nothing hanging from the ceiling. But the best part was the ending for me, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen the film, but Ripley dies at the end. I believe there is actually a queen alien in her stomach at this point, and so to kind of end this madness once and for all, she falls into this fiery pit of lava, molten core.
Yeah, molten lava.
Sure, yeah. Very, very Terminator-esque, or Terminator 2-esque kind of ending.
Yeah, true.
But she falls in there, and I remember thinking, nope, she's dead. Okay. And for my younger self, that was really cool, because this woman who had somehow bravely and against all odds survived the first Alien movie, and then again survived the second one. And I don't even want to go into how she saved Newt and Bishop and they were just discarded, and we can get into all that all day. But
we will get into that.
But the point is that she knew what had to be done, and she did probably the bravest thing of her entire time in this franchise at that point, and threw herself into death because she knew what had to be done. And as a younger person, I thought that was the coolest thing.
No, I agree. And actually, you said the bravest thing she's ever done, but that's an interesting point, because if we look at the 3 movies, in the last quarter of each of the movies, she does something incredibly brave, and in each movie, it gets braver and braver. In the first movie, she's all alone and she's not very brave about it, but she goes to blow up the ship, right?
Yeah.
And then she realizes she can't stop Mother when she decides she doesn't want to do it. She can't stop Mother, right? So she has to haul ass back to the escape pod,
yeah.
Even though she doesn't want to do it, obviously, right? But she does it. She bucks up and does it. Then the second movie, when Newt is taken, without question, Bishop is saying that she shouldn't do it. Michael Bihn's character saying she shouldn't do it, but she's like, no, she's like, go screw yourself, I'm doing this, right? And but still incredibly brave. And then the third movie we end with something similar, where she does, I guess maybe what we might call the biggest bravery. But then again, I mean, by this point, maybe she realizes that my fate and the fate of the aliens is intertwined. So maybe I should just stop.
I guess that is kind of a way of looking at it.
And if you look at it that way, then stepping off into the lava, while scary, it's not really as brave as going down to get Newt, because Newt depended on someone, and whereas the people at the prison didn't depend on someone as much. Because anyway, I'm losing my point here. A lot of people don't like that ending. A lot of people don't like the fact that she was killed. They didn't like it when it happened. This is in 92, I believe. The year before this, around this time. It was the year after when Superman was killed. 93, right?
Oh, I think you're right, yeah. It was around then, yeah.
Yeah, so the 90s, it was kind of this new thing of the hero could be killed off, and you would have to see it, right?
Yeah.
And then they quickly start just simply doing, the Christ allegory every time a character dies, because that's an easy way to give someone meaning, right?
Sure,
He's like Christ. But,
anyway, that is definitely there with Ripley, is that Christ allegory when she falls, yeah.
Exactly. And, but it was one of the first movies of the 90s to do that, to take a trilogy and to take a series of movies and to end them with the main character dying. And that was very bizarre for people to see. What did you think about it? Were you okay with Ripley dying?
Yeah, I'm serious. As I can't remember exactly how old I was when I first saw this film, but I thought it was a great ending to the whole series. Even though that movie, I wasn't enjoying the movie nearly as much as I enjoyed the first two. And, it just, that kind of, to me, was the new high point of the movie for me. And I'm always going to be okay with the hero dying if it's a good death. If there's a reason behind it, or if there's, they go out kind of like that dude just punching the alien in the face. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. So to me, that didn't bother me as much. What bothered me was that and as we kind of touched on earlier, what bothered me was that it seemed like the writers, and now that I know more about the production behind it, I know why, but it seemed like the writers at the time were like, yeah, James Cameron did something really cool, but we kind of want to do our own thing, so we're just going to kill off, these other characters, right? And because my first thought was like, okay, let's say for some reason you couldn't get the actress who played Newt, or you just don't want to deal with the fact that you want to do a prison colony and you don't want to have a little girl running around, whatever, anything like that. But at least you could have gotten Bishop back, or done something more with him, or anything. I don't know. I wasn't. And because there's a third person that she rescues. It's Michael Bihn's character, right? Yeah. So he should have been there too. Yeah.
That's right, because there was Bishop, half of Bishop, and there was Newt, and there was Michael Bihn's character. Damn it, what is his name in the movie? I'm forgetting. I want to know for the rest of the... I know we're done talking about aliens, but... Hicks.
Hicks. It was Hicks. It was Hicks, yeah. I was like, I just saw it the other day. I just couldn't think of it. But I wish they had done something more with that. That over... Ripley's death was one thing, but that was actually what kind of irked me more than Ripley's death. Ripley's death actually seemed like it was salvaging something that started off really bad. And maybe that might not be a popular opinion, but...
No, I agree. I think it was a terrible decision to kill off Hicks and to kill off Newt at the beginning of the movie, to kill him off screen. I understand that Newt was older, so you'd have to deal with the fact that the actress wasn't the same age anymore,
sure,
right? And she was cryogenically frozen, but hire another actress then.
Yeah,
right?
just hire a new girl. They do it all the time, I mean...
Right. Yeah. So no one would have cared, and people recognize that she can't stay 9 forever, right? And she wasn't acting anymore.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, they should not have killed them off, because, okay, the truth is, aliens had no need to exist, right? Alien was a wonderful, self-contained movie that had great ideas in it, right? And its trajectory was simply achieving some kind of safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally, the right circumstances arise where, even though a sequel isn't needed, but like John Updike's Rabbit series, sequels are not something that happen in literature and literary things, right, all that much. But occasionally, the right person can have a good spin on it. So Aliens had a really good spin and took the catharsis of safety in the first film as an ending, and now has the catharsis of repairing one's life after a traumatic event, right?
Right.
That after this event, not only does she have personal trauma, but she's lost her daughter, and now she has a kind of a surrogate in some ways. That is a little more psychological than I wanted to sound. But the point is, we have a nice, definite catharsis. We have a family unit, right? We have Hicks, we have Ellen, we have the dog, Bishop.
I was about to say, is he the family dog? I swear I was waiting.
Yeah, he's the family dog. Hell yeah, he is.
Oh, man.
Anyway, but the third movie, though, destroys that family unit, which also works with some other things I want to say about Aliens. I know you probably want to move on, Alien 3. But it destroys that family unit, and it tries to do it to be edgy and cool, and it's not edgy and cool. It just seemed really lazy or really cheap.
Sure. We are about to run out of time, and I would like to bring up something. I'd like to bring up something that you and I are both gamers. And not too long ago, a game was released called Aliens Colonial Marines, and it was absolute garbage for the most part. There were some fun parts, but it was pretty much garbage. And one of the things that people had a little bit of a problem with was that in this story, Hicks not only did not die, which is fine because in the movie we just discussed he gets put in the pod, but he somehow comes back for this particular part of the game. But now there's a new Alien game about to come out, Alien Isolation. And this particular game is doing something kind of similar, but at least, as it stands right now, it sounds like this game is going to be a lot better, and let's hope that that's true. But keeping with the theme of the Alien movies, this particular game is going to have a set of DLC that will have 2 missions, which will actually feature the player playing as a main character from the first Alien movie. And it's going to be kind of interesting because they actually got the entire, well, not the entire, but the majority of the cast back for these 2 missions and doing the voice and I believe also some motion capture.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah. I know Sigourney Weaver will reprise her role as Ellen Ripley. And this will be the first time she's done this role in like 17 years, so, Right. Tom Skerritt will be returning to voice Dallas. Veronica Cartwright will be returning to voice Lambert. And Harry Dean Stanton will be returning as Brett. And also, I'm sorry, I forgot about Yaphet Kotto, who was a great actor. If you've never seen some of his stuff, he's
forgot
Parker.
The black guy almost. But I'm glad you remembered.
Well, I actually was going to say, and I wasn't sure, but wasn't he the Bond villain from Live and Let Die? I believe he was. I think he was. Anyway, he's a great actor, even if I'm misremembering him. But so all of these people are going to be returning, and I just kind of want to get a couple of brief statements from you as a gamer and as a fan of the series, what you think about this.
Okay, so then, fan service few things can kill a series like fan service.
Sure.
Because of the fact that you quit aiming for your organizing principle is no longer meaning or even continuation of plot. It simply is just showing things that people remember. This was one of the problems with the Star Wars prequels, right? Just, hey, you remember this, you liked this once, do you still like it now? And so Aliens Colonial Marines, it had that major problem of it wasn't a good game. There wasn't much focus on quality because of the fact that, people were just, hey, you remember this character? Aren't you happy? Right?
Right.
So then, pretty terrible. Alien Isolation, however, tries to fit itself with a new character, or I won't say new because she exists. We just never see her. Well, we see one picture in the director's cut in Aliens.
Please fill the audience in on who the main character of the game will be. if they don't know.
Yeah, Amanda. Yeah, Amanda Ripley, who we only see in the director's cut of Aliens, where Ellen is given a picture of her daughter as an old woman. The last picture taken before she died. Anyway, but we're playing Amanda Ripley, who in between the first and second movie is contacted by the company to travel to a space station where they believe they have some idea of where her mother went to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so you're playing her, and already, the game has a lot of potential problems, but I think the fact that it's not focusing on action so much, it's focusing more on atmosphere will help it, because atmosphere as a principle can go a long ways, more so than referential things. But, however, a moment ago I just said that fan service is a problem, and yet I'm excited about the fan service of having the last half of Alien playable.
Are you saying that you're a part of the problem? Is that what you're saying?
I might be, but I might be, and I really hate it. It's the first game I've pre-ordered in years and years, and so it's really sad. But that's a different subject. But I think the reason that I think we might say it's somewhat different is because of the fact that the principle here that organizes the experience is not just on references, it seems so far. It seems to be on taking what events occurred in a different medium, film, right, and trying to find a way that you can proceduralize or you can extend those scenes and to give a greater understanding of not only the characters, that's the reason they recorded new dialogue,
mm-hmm.
but also an understanding of the ship itself. I'm really excited to be able to go walk around the Nostromo and to see it in that way. Anyway, so I'm really excited about that, and I hope that the game itself is good. I also hope that the DLC is not just fan service, and that there is some characterization in there. I would like some extra meat to be added to the original Alien movie through characterization in this, but that probably won't happen.
Sure. As a fan of horror games and horror movies, I am looking forward to this. Also, I love the Alien series, and this will probably be the first good one, if it turns out that way, in a long time. At least since Super Nintendo and
games?
Sega. Yeah.
Well, don't forget 1999's Alien vs. Predator. It's a pretty good game, and
that is true.
And so it's from Rebellion Software. It's a pretty good game. It has some problems, but it's good. And then also Rebellion's 2010 Alien vs. Predator was not a particularly well-reviewed game, but I do hear that it was okay.
I played a little bit of that one and did not enjoy it as much, but yeah. But to kind of end things on the note of the movie and stuff like that, we've discussed a lot about the first. We really touched only on the first three films, but if you, as an audience, if you're looking for more stuff on the Alien franchise, Eric can tell you about all the books. There are several comic books out there that I hear are actually very good. And we have these video games that we just talked about. There's a lot out there for this franchise if you're a fan or if you want to get into the series. Eric, if there is a fan out there listening to this who has never had much of an exposure to the Aliens franchise, what would your reasoning be? Why would you tell them that they should give this franchise a chance?
Well, they should give it a chance because the fact that the first two films, at the very least, as you know me personally, I'm not much on fan service, nor am I much of a fan of what's straightforward genre work. So then, if a person just wants to see aliens and shit, and explosions, don't bother me with recommendations, right?
Sure.
If a person wants to see legitimately good films that happen to be science fiction, right? Then I think the main thing I would say is that Alien and Aliens, they not only defined separate genres of science fiction, the science fiction horror film and the science fiction military film, right? But they also did so with an awareness of of what science fiction should be aware of, which is our world, right? Alien looks at group dynamics and male-female relationships and the idea of the working class, right? And also bureaucracy, right? It takes all these things that are relevant to discussions of our actual lives, right? And then not only invents a genre while discussing them, but tries to come to some interesting conclusions about them. And then Aliens as well takes some of the same themes, and then in addition to that, war, arrogance, and trustworthiness, I think, and does something similar with them. So that would be the reason, because they are of science fiction, and categorizing science fiction into three fields. True blue art happens to be science fiction. 2001 Space Odyssey, stuff like that, right? And then probably go the next step down, which are very good, meaningful movies that happen to be in the science fiction world. And then we have our third category, which is just aliens getting shot by Marines.
Yeah, right.
Your typical science fiction.
Sure.
So then these films fall into that second category, but they spend a lot of time reaching their hands over into the first category, right? And so that's why you should see them, because they're excellent films, and some of the most excellent films in the science fiction genre.
Right. All right. Well, Eric, I want to thank you for joining me today on the podcast. If people want to follow you on social media or, read anything that you've done or anything like that, where can they do that?
Okay, so, at one time I was a big social media fan, but now I just kind of stay away from it. But if people are interested, they can find my work under the pseudonym M. Lockaby. Just look for Lockaby. My first book is called Kick Around Nixon. It's about Moby Dick and Pac-Man, and also about the 1983 U.S. National Video Game Tournament. And so you can read some stuff there. I have some essays which I think are kind of hard to find these days on video games and interactivity. And then, of course, you can come to Georgia and you can take my class. It's not on video games, though. Anyway,
all right.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. I appreciate it.
No problem. I think the key there was don't follow me on social media, but check out my book. Was that right?
Yeah. Okay, unless you count Goodreads. Like, follow me on Goodreads, please, right? But otherwise, Twitter, I just get bored using it. Facebook, I
can't blame you.
It.
Yeah. All right. If you want to follow me, I am pretty active on Twitter under my name @StephenWilds. Also, this YouTube channel here, YouTube / Serenity's Bane. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them on the video in the comments section, or, find me on Twitter if you want to have a longer conversation, or if you just want to pick mine or Eric's brain about the Alien franchise, feel free. But I think that's going to wrap it up for us here today. And until next time, this has been Wilds on Film, and I want you guys to have a good night.